Hello, everyone, and welcome to the King's Virtual Open House session. Today, we have Dr. Lysak here to give us an insight into the program available through the English department here at King's. We will begin with the presentation, and then we will shift into a Q&A session. I would encourage you to submit all of your questions to us via the Zoom chat function as they arise. And then, without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Lysak for her presentation. Dr. Lysak, over to you.
Thank you, Aziz, and hello, everybody. I see Dawn, Sheila, and Carissa, I believe. And as Aziz said, my name is Krista Lysak. I'm the chair of the English department at King's. Been a professor for about 20 years now, and I've been at King's for just about 10. So I'm very glad you could join us. I'm not sure if you're zooming in from the local area, from the London area, from Southwestern Ontario, but maybe we'll have a little chance to talk about who you are and where you're located. Right now, I want to say broadcasting, but I guess that's not quite the right term for online. But I'm zooming from my dining room / temporary study in Old North in London, just 2-3 blocks away from the King's campus. So quite close to the physical space that we're all very fond of and where we hope you'll be able to join us either in person or online in fall, whatever life throws at us. We are planning on being ready for you. So in a few moments, I do want to take you through some kind of basic information I thought you might be interested in knowing. Again, we'll leave time for your questions at the end and plan on maybe, I don't know, no more than half an hour together probably. So we're not looking at hours and hours, I promise. Not going to lecture for you interminably. But I wanted to open with a poem because this is a great time for poetry. Poetry is, well, sometimes it's very long, but sometimes, as in many lyric poems, it's short and compact, and it's a perfect format for the kind of times that a lot of us are living right now, where we're feeling confined or we're feeling quarantined, and the world can feel very small and we can feel a little cut off from other people. And the thing about poetry, and especially I'm thinking kind of shorter lyric poetry, is that within that very compact space of sometimes only a few stanzas or a few lines, a poet can imagine worlds for us and create something really expansive and really transformative and really wonderful. So I could read any poem for you, but I thought I would, since we're kind of getting to know each other here today, read you a poem by Emily Dickinson, the 19th century American poet, who was really a very formally innovative poet ahead of her time in so many ways. And it's a poem called Nobody, Who Are You? From about 1893. So I'll just read it for you. If you ever want to read this poem for yourself, have a look at it. You can easily Google Emily Dickinson, I'm Nobody, and this poem will come up. So let me just read it for you. It's quite short. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public like a frog. To tell one's name, the livelong June, to an admiring bog. So, I mean, it's obviously a very playful poem. The poet is saying, I'm nobody, and asking who you are, and then, you know, striking up kind of point of identification there. We're all somebody, we're all nobody, but it hardly matters. And the second stanza in the poem says, you know, being somebody is kind of dreary. It's kind of like listening to somebody who's always going on about themselves. So it's kind of a poem for, you know, a time of quarantine where, you know, we're trying to figure out who we all are. But a poem maybe also for introverts, which a lot of English majors are, not everybody, but many of us are, where we can kind of, you know, revel in our own sense of quiet and introspection and have a moment to think about things. So I'm just going to want you to tuck that away. And if you want to return to it later, we can. But, you know, having struck a bit of a poetic note, I hope, with you, I thought we'd move into some information, some of which might be a little bit dry, but I think still pretty useful. So if you're interested in doing an English degree at King's, I can assure you to be coming to a really wonderful place, a small community, but a vibrant one. So to start off, I'd let you know the kinds of ways you could organize your studies if you were to decide to come to King's and to do a degree. There are lots of ways to fashion your studies. So some of our students like to go kind of whole hog and do an honors specialization in English. Others like to do a major in English, which is not quite as many courses. We also have something called a specialization in English. And then we have, on top of those other 3 modules, we call them, 3 different minors for people who maybe want to fit in a significant amount of study in English literature, but maybe aren't going to devote the entire portion of their studies to that. So we have a minor in English, we have a minor in English for teachers, and then we have the smallest little module, which is just called a minor in general English. So I know I've read those to you pretty quickly, but a lot of the information that I'm about to give you now is up on the English website. So if you were to Google King's University College English, then you would be able to find our website very, very easily. And all these programs I've just listed, you could find on the main page of the English webpage, and they're the programs or the modules. So anything, again, from an honors specialization right down to a minor, there are lots of ways to, as I say, organize or arrange your English studies at King's. The specialization, before I go on to talk about how some students kind of put together their courses and so forth, the specialization, I'll say, is one that attracts particularly students who want to really focus their studies on English and who perhaps want to go on to do graduate studies. And that is something we do have at King's. We have a number of people who come to study English because they want to go into any number of careers, teaching or law or advertising. And some of them come because they want to become professors, and they'll do the honors specialization with a view to going on to do a master's in English. So I know we're just thinking today about first year, but very often we'll get people who come to open house who are starting to think beyond that as well. Okay, so that's just a note on our modules. So the second thing I wanted to say about modules before we talk about courses and the other professors that you could meet at King's is to mention that students at King's, and at Western for that matter, sometimes like to combine their modules. So when I went to university and I started my university studies in 1989, so a little bit of time ago now, I think people more commonly pursued a particular major. But these days, sometimes students like to, for different reasons, because they're interested in a lot of things, or they're interested in flexibility, like to combine their modules. You can do this at King's, at Western, at Brescia, at Huron, whatever campus you happen to be resident at. And of course, we're here about King's today. So we've had students in English at King's who've combined studies with history. So they've done maybe a double major. We've had plenty of students who've combined English and philosophy. So they've double majored in those. Or something quite different, say English and social justice and peace studies, or English and disability studies, or English and psychology, or English and political science. So there's really no limit to what you can do in terms of if you're a student who wants to really focus on more than one area, you can certainly do that. And part of what you would do when you're coming to plan your courses at King's in the first year would be to, I guess virtually at the moment, sit down with an academic counselor and decide on what courses you want to take and how you might want to combine 2 areas of study. I'd also mention that you actually don't have to declare your main area or areas of study until your second year. And sometimes we have students in their 3rd or 4th year who are still figuring that out. So if you're not sure what you want to focus on yet, if you don't know, I want to be an English major or I want to be a philosophy major, there's time to figure that out. The first year of study at university is one where you can explore lots of different subject areas without having to commit to a fixed program of study. Okay. Now, before I go and mention some of the first year English course options are, I also wanted to, if you are to go and look at the English webpage for King's at some point, draw your attention to the section of our webpage that will show you the different faculty, the different professors who teach at King's, because I'm not the only one. We're all in different houses at the moment, so they're not all here with me. But we have about a dozen or so people who teach regularly at King's in our English program. And if you go to the website, you'll see pictures of some of the others there. I'll mention maybe a couple of them. One of them is Dr. Paul Werstein. He's our Shakespeare specialist. In fact, he's a graduate himself of King's College, graduated in the 1970s. And he's a senior member of our department. He's a very distinguished scholar. He's a wonderful teacher. And his reputation as a Shakespeare scholar is international. So he's not just a sort of local boy hero, although he is very much that. He's somebody who has published extensively in the field of textual studies and the manuscripts of Shakespeare plays. So if you come to King's and you were to stay on, then I think a lot of students would say you should definitely take Dr. Werstein's Shakespeare course. It really is a wonderful treat. I also met that we have a professor who focuses in Canadian literature. His name is Dr. Ray. We have a professor named Dr. Patton who works on 20th century British literature, including, not only, but including some popular fiction about James Bond and spy thrillers and comics, so verging into popular literature. My area is Victorian literature. And we have another individual, his name is Dr. Dowdell, whose area of teaching and research is 18th century literature. He teaches a really interesting course on hermits, which seems like a very timely topic these days. And we've had a number of other professors who stick with us every year, who teach different things. So I can't go into everybody's area, but if you're curious, then I would certainly suggest you go have a look at the website and see what people teach, their areas of research and scholarship, because of course that's one of the things that's different about university versus high school. People who teach the courses aren't just delivering lectures in class, but they're also very actively producing articles and books and editions in their field. So they're actually creating knowledge and not just sort of transmitted in the classroom. So let's talk a bit about the first year course options. There's more than one option for first year English courses at King's. If you decide that you think you might like to go on and to do an area of study in English at King's, you want to specialize or do a major or a minor in English, then you only need to do one of these English courses. You don't need to do all of them. So typically that's what you would do. You pick one of the English courses and pursue that for your first year. And then the rest of your courses, if you're doing a full load, can be whatever else you want to pick. So maybe you're interested in doing a psychology course, or you want to do a mathematics course, or perhaps you want to do a history of philosophy course. You can do that, and then one of your other choices would be English. So it comes down really to three choices for first year English at King's. You can do a course called Understanding Literature Today. I won't bore you with the course numbers, or should I? I don't know. I feel like maybe I will anyway. English 1020, Understanding Literature Today. So that's a full year course, wonderful course. It gives you a real of different kinds of literature, examples of poetry, of fiction, and of drama. So you get a real good range of different genres. It also includes different authors and historical periods. So it's a good sweep, a good general. So that's called Understanding Literature. The second of the three options is called Forms of Fiction, and it's English 1024. So that course, it also gives you a really solid foundation, a good introduction that will permit you to go on in studies in English in your second and third and fourth year, if that's what you decide. But as its name suggests, Forms of Fiction, it focuses on fiction. So you wouldn't be looking at poetry in this course or at drama. You'd be looking at a selection of short fiction, which could begin with Greek epic. So those very early narratives into the 18th century, where you start to see the rise of the novel. 19th century, you see short fiction, and right up into contemporary times. So you might look at authors like, it's different every year, but authors like Homer, Swift, Austen, Dickens, Virginia Woolf, Toni Morrison. It's really a wonderful range. And this might be a good time to also mention that on our English website, we do have examples of the course outlines for each of these courses. So if you really want to see specific texts, what you're reading exactly and what the schedule for a year would look like and what the assignments would be, then I would invite you to, again, go to the website and look at the section that says English courses and keep following the clicks and the links until you get to the course outlines. If you have trouble with that, I'm going to make sure that Aziz or I give you my email address so you have a way to get in touch with me if you can't quite find the information you're looking at. But back to the first year courses. So we had Understanding Literature Today, we have Forms of Fiction, and then the third option is 2 half courses, which you can take, one in the fall and one in the winter. So the first one is called The Storyteller's Art, and it looks at traditions of storytelling literature. That's a very fundamental way to think about literature, but a really rich one. So that's called The Storyteller's Art. The second half of that course is The Storyteller's Art, Part 2. And this one is a special topic. So at the moment, the special topic is digital narratives. So the person teaching the course this year looks at electronic texts. And the students have some hands-on fun in that course as well, where they work together on building a narrative, a digital game that is sort of generated through narrative. So I hope that gives you a sense of the options you would have in first year. So it's just to say there's more than one option. Some students are drawn to one choice more than another, and so they simply say, this sounds interesting, I want to do that course. Other students say, well, this one actually fits my schedule a little bit better, so I'm going to take that course. But regardless of what you select, it will be a wonderful first year course taught by really dedicated professors, with a lot of experience and a lot of love of their subject and a lot of experience with first year students, returning students, people who are, in love with literature too, or who think that they might be. All right, so that's the first year options. If you're curious about what courses you could take in your second, third, and fourth year, well, you can email me. I can send you quite a detailed handout that would show you an example of what this year's timetable looks like for the second, the third, and the fourth year. Or you could do as I've been suggesting and kind of poke away at our website and see that in our second year we have, for example, a survey course in British literature that takes you right from medieval times to contemporary times. Or you can see that we have courses in science fiction and fantasy literature and children's literature. Once you get into the third year, you start to see some more specialist courses. So for example, the Shakespeare course that I mentioned. And then finally, in your fourth year, you have an opportunity to do a seminar, which is a smaller course. It's a bit more like how you would imagine doing work in graduate school with say maybe 12 or 15 students. And at that point, students are really experienced and they begin to present their own work in class. They do a slightly longer research essay. And the topics for the fourth year seminars have really been very often closely tied to, let's say, a professor's research area. So you get to really see what professors are doing in their own research and get to sort of participate in it. Give you an idea of what some past 4,000 level seminar topics have been. We've had a course on the creative economy in Canada, so festival culture, the Stratford Festival and so forth. We've had courses just on, say, a figure like Shakespeare. We've had a recent fourth year seminar on spy stories. And we had recently a seminar devoted to different kinds of adaptations of the very famous Charlotte Bronte novel, Jane Eyre. So you can see it really runs the gamut, all kinds of genres, all kinds of topics, all kinds of research areas, and different national literatures, Canadian, American, British, post-colonial. So you get at King's a really sort of comprehensive education in English literature, much the same as you would in English departments across the country. Then lastly, before I think we'll turn over to some questions, I also want to give those who are with us today a sense of some of the other opportunities kind of outside the classroom at King's. So within the classroom, I mean, we do a lot of wonderful things. We do research, we do seminars, not just the lectures. We have sometimes field trips and other forms of experiential learning. So for example, class trips to theater productions in Stratford and Toronto, class trips to museums or library archives. But there are also some co-curricular things that a number of our English students have been involved with. And it sort of depends on your own interests. Nobody has to do co-curriculars, but many people like to express themselves in a variety of ways. So here are some of the things that English students sometimes do when they come to King's. There's an English club that students can join. It has an executive and they organize a number of different activities each year. There's also student council representation. Some students are really interested in student government, and there's always an English rep who sits on the student executive. If you're someone who enjoys writing, and you probably are if you're interested in English, there's a student-run publication called The Regis, and it publishes journalistic writing and creative writing. We have also, for people whose writing is a bit more academically focused, an undergraduate research journal at King's and an undergraduate research conference, where you can already begin to sort of practice what it is to be a professional academic and have your work published in the research journal or present an academic paper at the annual King's Research Conference. Just a couple more sort of involvement type things. Some of our English students have come to King's interested or already with some acting experience. So there is a small theater company at King's called the King's Players, and they mount, I believe, 2 major productions every year. You can audition for that and strut your stuff on the stage. If you're somebody who's already thinking about a career in writing, or perhaps you're starting a second career or third career, or just very interested in the practice of teaching, then we have a writing center at King's called The Right Place. And students can bring their work there to be sort of not evaluated, but to get feedback on their essays. The tutors don't sort of write the papers for them, but they provide good, sound peer tutoring advice. So our students often will avail themselves of that, but our students will sometimes also be employed at The Right Place as peer tutors, and those are paid positions. A really wonderful way to learn about the teaching and practice of writing is to be a peer tutor at The Right Place. And lastly, and it seems not like it's such a possibility at the moment, but I know that it will eventually be, there are all kinds of study abroad opportunities. And if you want to get in touch with me, I can send you a link and give you a sense of what some of our English students have done in recent years as far as traveling overseas and doing a summer or a term at places like the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, or at a university in Italy and other places around the world. So I'm hoping that that whole possibility will be back. It will be eventually, but just we'll have to wait. And finally, I think I said finally, but this is the finally. I think I mentioned near the outset that we have some students who come to King's not sure what they want to do, and others come with this kind of sense that they would like to go on to master's programs or PhD programs. And nobody has to know what they do when they're doing a first year English course. You can figure that out. And it doesn't matter what stage in life you are. There's always time to figure things out. But for people who are trying to make maybe a choice between a larger school or another province and that sort of thing, I did want to assure anyone who's thinking of coming to King's, but maybe is a little bit on the fence, that we do have plenty of graduates of our English program who have gone on to master's and PhD programs and professional programs like law school and library school at any number of institutions. So I'll just mention some of them. University of St. Andrews in Scotland, University of Toronto, McGill, Queen's, Western, of course, University of Saskatchewan, and others as well. So our students do well. Our students who are dedicated, who really avail themselves of their courses and of their professors, do go on to graduate school if that's their goal. A number of them have been awarded scholarships, such as the Ontario Graduate Scholarship or the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council scholarships. A number of them have entered essays in what's called the Global Undergraduate Awards and been highly commended. So we have some really, really good students who come through our program who we're really proud of. But it's a very accessible program, one that reaches out to people, whether they're first generation students, whatever socioeconomic background. We have a really diverse group of students, and we're really proud of that fact. As far as the kind of careers students have gone on to, again, our webpage tells you some about that, but in addition to, say, going on to grad school, we have graduates who've gone into teaching and law and journalism, libraries, editing, the film industry. They've opened small businesses, they've gone into communications. So really, you can use an English degree, if you want to put it that way, for just about anything. And the best reason to study English is because you love it, because you like to think and write and create. You know, that's, to me, still the best reason to study English. It's why I'm still, you know, that's why I still study it. Aziz, why don't we do some questions now? See if anybody has anything. I can certainly repeat anything I've said. Or Aziz, if you have any questions for me, that works just as good.
Sure. So I have a question for you. Are there a lot of presentation in English courses, or is it mostly writing heavy?
Presentations?
Yeah. Is there a lot of presentations in the English courses in the first year, or is it just writing heavy?
Well, you have a combination of different things. So you would have, certainly there'd be lectures by professors, but the classes aren't that big. We're not these big, massive courses. So in your first year, maybe you'd have 30 students, 20 students in the class. And what most professors will do is, in addition to having lecture, they'll integrate discussion into that. Opportunity for back and forth. There'll be there are tests, there'll be kind of passage analyses. And depending on the professor, you might have some short presentations. So that's just a way of saying that this really is a variety. If you have a look at our course outline samples, you kind of get a really good sense. As far as like a more extended presentation, you probably wouldn't see so much of that until subsequent years. So you probably in your first year wouldn't be expected to do a 20-minute seminar presentation at that point. You'd be working up to that in a later year. But if you're someone who likes to talk and chat and kind of converse, there'll be a way for you to do that even in the first year.
Perfect, thank you. And in your opinion, what do you think the most interesting course is in the English program at King's?
Yeah, well, everybody knows that's a hard question, but it's a good question to ask. So obviously I'm not going to give one course because there's so many. I would say the Shakespeare course, which I mentioned, a really perennially pleasing, rewarding course. So I would mention that one. We have a number of students who really like the children's literature course. Sometimes it's because, you know, they're still very attached to young adult literature because there's a lot of great stuff out there. Or it's because they're in maybe the childhood and social institutions program at King's, or they're thinking going to teachers college, so that's very popular. And also popular have been the fantasy literature and science fiction courses. So those are some of them. And some of the courses we offer every year, and others are sort of, you know, not offered as regularly, or there's special topics courses. So you have to kind of look at the offerings every year, see what's there, and the most exciting course probably is a little bit different every year.
Perfect, thank you. The other question is, what are fourth year courses that you personally recommend for a student who's starting at King's in the fourth year?
Yeah, in the first year?
Fourth year.
Oh, the fourth year. Oh, yeah. Someone is coming in. Okay. Well, those are by definition special topics. The fourth year seminar courses are sort of tailored to, as I mentioned, the professor's research. In the fourth year, however, you wouldn't just be taking 4,000 level numbered courses. Our students would also still be taking 3,000 level. So next year in 3,000 level courses, if you're coming in to do these upper level courses, we're offering a Shakespeare course, which I think tried to sell to people more than once because it's just that good. Another upper year course we have is called Consuming Women. It's a course in 19th and 20th century British literature, but it's arranged particularly around the theme of consumer culture, shopping, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of an interesting little niche course. Also in the upper year courses offerings for next year, we have a course in Canadian drama. We have a course in, I believe, American literature and the graphic novel. And we also are going to have a upper year course next year in Renaissance literature. So there are a number of upper year courses. And I say upper year because fourth year students take those as much as third year course. You're sort of lumped together at that point. You're simply upper year students. You enjoy that kind of designation. That wouldn't prohibit you from taking courses with a 2 in front of them. There's a course called Crime Writing, which is a 2000 level course, but I think it'd be very, very interesting as well. Crime Writing, it looks at crime fiction and its origins from the 18th century right to recent times. I think a lot of people would find that crime writing course really interesting, particularly if you're coming in as an upper year student, someone with a bit of a background already.
Perfect, thank you. Could you explain what's the difference between the lecture content and the tutorial content? Like what would students be doing in Ecuador?
Well, since we're a smaller program, our courses or like our lectures and our tutorials are really more or less combined. So we won't be sending out into really a smaller group as a tutorial. That would be really, as I say, combined with the lecture. So rather than a separate breakout group and a separate meeting, your professor would, in fact, by definition, tutorial leader. So how this might kind of practically work out is that the first part of the class might be a bit more lecture-based, and then the second part, your professor might pivot to a bit more of a discussion style and have you working on, so say, short writing activities or doing a bit more speaking with each other, that sort of thing. And it's a bit different from, say, a big course like, I don't know who to pick on. If you were, let's say, at Western, the main campus, and doing a psychology course, you might have a tutorial with a teaching assistant. Whereas in English, we don't have teaching assistants. We have the courses taught really exclusively by your professor, who will know your name and who will get to know you really well. If you want to be known. Otherwise, you can just sit in the back and try to hide.
Perfect.
You can try.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. To wrap up our session, I would like to thank Dr. Lysak for taking the time to speak with us today. And I would also like to thank all of you for joining us. Our next live session will be on Monday, May 11th, featuring our writing department from 1 to 2 and our French department from 3 to 4. Stay tuned to our social media channels for more information. In the meantime, if you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to contact us at kings@uwo.ca. And then if you have any questions for Dr. Lysak, I provided her email in the chat function for you. And if you have any questions for me, you can feel free to email me at kings@uwo.ca. So thanks again for being here, and we're looking forward to meeting you in person in the future.